So we're moving to our next session after the lunch, which is, again, the topic which we have heard a lot. I request everyone to pay a little bit of attention. We're kind of starting with the session. I would request people to please settle down. There are a lot of seats. Request you to please find seats. All right, moving to our next session, which is finding customers in a cookieless world. And for the same, I would like to invite our moderator, Mr. Akash Batra, Executive Director and Head of Marketing Growth, Customer Experience and Analytics, DBS Bank. Welcome, sir. I would also like to call upon stage Mr. Abhishek Joshi, SVP and Business Head, MX Player, Mr. Rishi Sharma, Senior Vice President, Business Development, Affinity, and Mr. Sachin, Vashishtha, Chief Marketing Officer, Paisa Bazaar. Welcome, everyone. Can we have a round of applause? Thank you. Well, over to you, Akash.
All right, thanks for all the patience of waiting for us. All right, so we've got a fairly interesting topic to discuss today. And let me kind of just set the context about why we're here and why we're having this discussion and, just to make sure we're on the same page, right? So I think there are two, so to say, trends in our industry which are kind of driving this conversation, right? And the first trend clearly is the demand that consumers are placing on data privacy, right? I think that's one larger one, and I was looking at some stats. Some 91% customers globally feel they're concerned about the amount of data that organizations can actually track, and close to 42% of customers have actually started taking some actions, ad blockers, and making sure cookies are disabled and so on and so forth. So that's one trend, right? The second trend has been largely regulations, right? And we've gone through GDPR, there's the California privacy law, and we're already having discussions about the impending India privacy data protection law. So there is a lot of drive from regulators in making sure that the customer privacy is taken care of, right? And these are the two majorly driving forces for our discussion today, right? And in a sense, cookieless world is part of what I say, a new data privacy-centric world, right? Where all of us as consumers or as advertisers or as publishers have to be very careful about what paths that we tread as we move forward, right? So I think that's the background, right? Now, just coming to the topic itself, cookies have been almost a backbone of the open internet for a very long time, right? I mean, they allow you to track, allow you to retarget, allow you to understand more about your customers, and eventually publishers and platforms use cookies to make sure your targeting is sharper and your effectiveness is higher, right? So given this background of advertising or marketing in the cookieless or the data privacy-centric world, two large players of the industries have taken a few steps quite aggressively, right? One was Apple, and Apple is kind of, so to say, the pioneer in taking this positioning of data privacy and so on and so forth. Started 2017 when they launched IPT, and where eventually, at least their positioning was that we're very careful and centric about data privacy, and that's what they will do, right? And again, we can debate on whether that was just a marketing ploy. Do they really care about the consumer, or is it a way for them to push their own ad network? That's separate, right? And we know 14.5 iOS got launched roughly about a year back, and it gave customers the choice, right? When you see new app you install, gives you an option. Do you want the app to track your behavior outside the app, right? Which most people said no. Last numbers that I was seeing, the numbers range between 10 to 15% of people saying yes, you can track what my behavior is, right? The second big player is Google, right? And Google actually announced about 2 years back saying they'll deprecate third-party cookies on Chrome browser. And Chrome browser, we know, has a large market share, 70-80%. And they said they will deprecate it. Initially, the timeline was 22 this end, 22 Q1, if I remember correctly. But obviously, they realized that the impact was huge. And Google is in a fairly interesting space because Google's also an ad platform and also a platform owner, Chrome, right? So now they've pushed it to 23 end, right? Which obviously gives a lot of time to all of us, right? So that's the background, right? And the other thing that I always say about this topic is there is very little that is certain about this topic, right? And if anyone, and I'm just saying it on behalf of all my colleagues, if any one of us say something and we're putting the disclaimer, don't hold us for it, because I know things will change. We know things will change, right? And it's a fairly evolving conversation, right? So what we're trying to do in next hopefully 20, 25 minutes is to give you a sense of what are the challenges that we're seeing today, and what are some of the strategies that you could evaluate or adopt as things move forward, right? So that's the background, right? And obviously I've got a phenomenal panel. I've got publishers, I've got marketers, I've got platform players who can come and give us a little bit of a better perspective of where this is going. And and as I say, most times the joy of moderating is that you learn more than kind of moderating the panel, right? So let me start this conversation with just going around the panel and get a sense of what their perspective is of what marketing and advertising will look like in a sort of say a data privacy world. Impact that they're already seeing, and an impact that they foresee, right? And we will come to strategies to address this in the second half of the conversation. But let me start with you, Abhishek. Abhishek, your view on this?
Hi, everybody. See, it's high time we as marketers and platform owners and advertisers and brands need to go back to the drawing board. We need to understand that the time has come or will come very soon that communication has to change. The way we communicate has to change the way we converse. Because if we, we will have to adopt to being acclimatized of how we are going to speak to our customers, consumers. Till now, we have been calling them users, but the time has come for us to start calling them customers and consumers. Because you will be speaking to an individual human now, and not a segmented user, lookalike user, persona-based advertising. We will need to give the power back to the consumer. We will need to understand that he has the right and he reserves the right to share information about his individual personality the way he likes and when he wants.
Super, and I love this, right? I think treating consumers as human beings, right? And I think just to underscore that fact, that often in our industry, we, as Abhishek is saying, look at people from almost in a petri dish to try to segment them and see what they do. But after all, they're human beings. I mean, they get up in the morning and they, go to work or, come back and they've got families to live. That's a great way. So I think relooking at how we start seeing consumers and make sure that it's more of a conversation, right? If I have to come to you, Rishi, and just give us a sense of, given you have a slightly broader perspective of working with multiple clients and so on and so forth. So if we can get your perspective, your own perspective, and if required for the organization, and then also give us a sense about what are the issues that you're seeing in the industry where marketers are facing or trying to come up to speed to this issue.
Thank you, Abhishek. Hi, everybody can hear me? Right? Hello? Yeah, okay. So, just to add on to this, I'll just add on a little bit of a different perspective here, right? So, completely agree with Abhishek. I mean, this was what was taught to me on day one, that a consumer is a consumer, please look at him as a consumer. But now let me just share some perspective from the other side. Let me try to break this thing into 3 pieces, right? Level 1, level 2, level 3. Let me just take level 1, which is very, very tactical kind of a thing and all this stuff and all. So, chalo, theek hai, cookies nahi hai, then what? What is the immediate impact on marketers? Now, let me try to break it up by categories, all right? So, and Abhishek, me, and Sachin were actually discussing this. So, for example, let's talk about the frequency of purchase, right? So, we have a category like an e-commerce, where the frequency of purchase, or something like a Zepto, where your frequency of purchase can be as high as every day. And, you have MX Player, you have, where you want to consume OTTs on every day. And then, on the other end, you have your extreme, like a Paisa Bazaar in the bank, where we are talking about, like, so for example, I will not take a loan every day. I mean, think about it like that, right? So, now, as digital, right, how do we go and acquire these customers, right? A lot of times, now, what is happening at a tactical level, if there are no cookies, what is going to happen is, there's not going to be any impact on search, right? Again, getting very tactical, there's no more impact on search, but you will see a lot of your display, your YouTubes, your UAC. Basically, to cut the long story short, anything which is based on interest-based targeting, right, your remarketing audience is going to shrink. That's what's going to happen, right? I mean, at the end of the day, what's going to happen is because your frequency, if you are in a category which has a high frequency of purchase, your audience will shrink, and therefore your cost will go up. I mean, of course, that can be debated what's going to happen to the CPM, but that's on a very tactical level, right? It's a very micro, and that's where you will see this cookieless having a significant impact on categories which have a high frequency of purchase versus a relatively lower frequency of purchase. Now, let me talk about, let's say, the second part of the story, right? So, when love the highlight where how are you building the trust with the consumer, right? I mean, at the end of the day. So, I'll give another example. This is more in the developed markets where we are seeing a browser share declining from Chrome and moving to other, different browsers. I mean, just another way, right? I mean, let me talk about like the Edge browsers and the Firefox browsers, which have already given up cookieless. But essentially, today what they're doing is they are empowering the customer, where they're telling the customer, listen, you know what, I'm going to give a part of my ad revenues to you. The thinking is very, very clear where the thinking is that how do I, if exactly on the same lines that Abhishek, right? You want to build a brand where customers can trust. Why should he trust you? That's the kind of conversation which is happening, especially on these, I would say outside the walled gardens of the Googles and the YouTubes and the Metas. But that's another very interesting way to think about. So, for example, today, as much as first-party, I can keep saying we are obsessed with first-party data and we need to create a DMP. It's a very easy way out. But honestly, I think getting these fundamentals right, that depending on the category, how am I talking to the customer is going to change rapidly, especially on the frequency up. So that's my second piece where, how these people have started evolving, and are the bigger guys seeing this as a threat? Absolutely. I mean, you're going to see clearly ways of ad revenues, how you're going to play. So how closer you're getting to the customer. And the third perspective, which I just want to add on, right? I mean, at the end of the day, today, are we, so and this might be a point contrary to what Abhishek is saying, that we need to know each user and to understand. Now, what is going to happen is essentially we are going to start creating cohorts, right? What is going to happen is, rather than, if I'm not going to get that user data, the only other way to get to those is creating cohorts. I mean, thinking on those lines. So, I don't know if hyper-personalization or hyper-targeting, provided you have those data, and as a customer, am I really open to it, or am I getting spooked out to it? But essentially, I think marketing lens, depending on the category, is going to start thinking more on the cohort side of it. And these are three things which I wouldn't, at three different levels.
No, I think the point that I found interesting is you said the value exchange with the customer is extremely critical, right? And obviously that value might be monetary or otherwise, but the customer has to believe that there's a reason for them to share the data. Therefore, they'll be open to getting relevant messaging from you, right? So Sachin, if I have to get you here and just give me a sense of, I mean, obviously you're a large advertiser and you're a large platform as well, right? And I'm assuming there's a lot of first-party data that you in any ways get, right? So before we again come to the solutions of how do we deal with the data-centric world or the privacy-centric world, is what's your opinion in how this is shaping or impacting more so what you do, both from a marketing perspective?
Yeah, so, we human beings are very interesting creatures, right? We have this fear of losing something even if we are not using it. So I read it everywhere that cookies are going, third-party cookies are going, how will we do marketing, etc., etc., etc. Just honestly put a hand on your chest and, just think a minute. How are you utilizing these cookies? Are these cookies even working for your brand? There are few categories for which these cookies are working very well. And largely what Amit mentioned, like e-commerce, where the frequency of purchase is very high. But we were discussing an example, someone is browsing a Mercedes even if he cannot buy it. And Mercedes is chasing that person with Mercedes ad. Does not make any sense, right? So, the biggest share of advertising budget goes to two players, Google and Facebook. In Facebook already has all the information because you have logged in to that platform. They're collecting first-party data, and they'll, and Facebook will keep on using that data to segment your ads. On the other hand, Google, even if Google stop, dropping a cookie on browser, Google has your entire chat history, right? And they can use, search history, and they can use that search history to serve ads, right? Obviously, few things will change. Marketing will go back to the simpler times where context would be the king. Earlier in those days where we used to see an ad related to the content, what you were consuming. maybe, for some time it'll, start surfacing again. You will see a shaver ad when you are on you're consuming content on grooming portals, etc., etc. In a longer run, I am sure, we will figure out something. So I'll give you an example of my brand. Sure. We are not utilizing third-party cookies. Sure. Because our product there is a long time horizon. They are need-based products, so I cannot push them. Like take a home loan basis some cohort or something.
No, super. So I like the contrarian view. Why the hell are we even having this conversation? It doesn't impact anyone's life. Let me give a slightly different perspective, right? I think my view is that one of the shifts that are going to happen significantly is that the lower funnel campaign efficiency is going to drop down significantly, right? And I think it's already happening. So if you look at since Apple launched ADT, Facebook's revenues have actually dropped significantly. And why has that happened? Because their ability to understand customers has actually reduced, right? While I agree they have logged in data, but they could make much more sharper profiles to understand customers given they knew the history and behavior on other platforms, right? So I think there's naturally a big significant impact that's happening, and as a significant investor or significant spender on lower funnel marketing at banks, we've seen impact as well, right? Where we've seen iOS customers, the attribution is becoming a challenge, and therefore the efficiencies of the platforms are going down, right? But the part that I agree is yes, it might not be as prevalent everywhere. Google obviously has lower impact, and we've seen that from outcomes as well. The second big challenge is, and I mentioned the first one, is the attribution challenge, right? Today, most of the customers that we acquire on iOS, we don't know they're coming from iOS, by the way, right? I mean, we can't attribute it to a campaign that Facebook is running on iOS platform. We can't figure that out, right? And I think the larger issue will be retargeting. While, I think I agree with the fact that the effectiveness of retargeting can be questioned, right? The Mercedes one is a good example, right? But we know the efficiencies that retargeting campaigns drive are relatively higher than initial campaigns that you run, because there's some level of interest and context which has already been established, right? So I think in my mind, yes, and I always say this is you can take two views on this, right? And one view is, which I agree with Sachin, is saying, which is the marketer's view or advertiser's view, I don't care, right? It's a platform publisher problem, let them figure it out and they come to me. If they actually fix it, if they don't fix it for me, I'll go somewhere else, right? And I'll find solutions and we'll come to strategies, right? The other ecosystem view to this is that, it's just a moment of uncertainty for all of us, and I think all of us will have to learn, adapt, and so on and so forth, right? So that's on the impact. Let me come to the second question, which I think is going to be interesting, right?
I agree. Sure. See, business-wide, there would not be any impact because the world will remain a level playing field. If it's there for you, it's there for your competitor also. Obviously, there will be a few short-term, jerks like retargeting you mentioned, and that too depends on the industry you are in.
Sure, no, I agree. So let me just shift gears and say, all right, this is happening. Yes, we believe there'll be some impact. What are the ways of addressing this, right? And I do want to again go around the panel and get a sense of saying what are 2 or 3 or 4 ways that you think marketers can actually address this cookieless world, right? And we've discussed one which was extensively echoed by everyone, which was context, right? I mean, do you really need to know the individual, who he is versus knowing what the context should be, right? So Abhishek, again, if I have to go around the panel and get a sense, saying yes, this is an issue, and you kind of gave a little bit of a answer in your first one as well, saying let's treat people like human beings and we'll be better marketers by definition, right? What are some of the other ways that you think marketers or publishers or advertisers can start, sort of say get ahead of the game and make sure you build the trust with the customers, the fact that we will be responsible in using your data, but also make sure your advertising, prospecting, marketing strategies get more efficient? Because eventually, every marketer will seek for that return on investment, right? And these things will or might have impact on driving those. Abhishek?
Okay, so let me take a step back. As digital marketers, one fundamental thing I wanted to ask, have we ever made an attempt to build trust? Ever? In the last 5 years, have we ever made an attempt to build customer trust for a brand? What have we done in the last 5 years? We have done transactional value business. You buy this, you get this. You buy this, you get this. You don't buy this, you don't get this. We have not built a brand. And nobody has built a brand on digital. companies and brands and organizations, when they launch, they build a brand offline, and when they want ROI, they come on digital. Why? This is a short-term problem when the volume of the business might go down, but the efficiency of doing this business can't go down. Because what are the data points that we used to get with third-party cookies? What? Ad IDs? And what? Did we know the name, sex, age, location? Yes, because we had ad IDs. What did we do with it? We cohorted them and we bucketed them into prospective users who can buy my product. That was built on transaction. The time has come to build brand love. Why will somebody come on MX? Not because MX is free, not because MX is cheap, not because MX does this content. We need to start developing habits. Number one. Number two, the power has to be given back to the customer, as I said earlier, to share data points about his identity whenever and wherever he wants to do that. ROI will be measured for every rupee spent, what the data point comes back from the user/customer. Unless or until we don't do that, we will never be able to build efficiencies. And the customer has to do it on his behalf, on his own. Number two. Number three, a value-first ecosystem has to be built. It takes a lot of time on a mobile phone to fill a form of your name, gender, age, phone number, then wait for the OTP. It takes a lot of time, and that is an effort. How are you going to address that? And trust me, once you are able to find a solution to that, in the long term, it builds a lot of efficiencies for your spends.
I think this is an interesting point, and I kind of agree with, I actually agree with one of the points. I think the point that he said, Abhishek, that the focus from lower funnel, which is transaction, this is another way for us to say transaction, advertising or transaction marketing, will start moving up, right? Now that you will also start struggling to deliver ROIs, the marketers will start moving up the funnel, right? So they will focus a lot more on, above the line, I shouldn't say above the line, top of the funnel marketing, including building brand love, which eventually makes the consumer naturally flow through down the funnel. And as some people say, as things get new, the old things become much new. And I think the little bit more traditional fundamentals of marketing will come back, unless that's what you wanted to say, right? Okay. No, so that's interesting. Rishi, again, I want to kind of get your perspective, both from a technology and a brand perspective. And I think Abhishek spoke about the brand really well. But again, if you mix both tech and brand, how do you see, what are the kind of strategies, approaches, you mentioned first party, for example, that you see marketers adopting?
So super. Just before I actually start giving the perspective, I was having this conversation with Sachin just 5 minutes before, asking him what percentage of your money is on the brand spends. And both of you guys come from the finance space, right? I know the conversations which happen on the finance side. It's so CPA, nahi mere ko lead chahiye, mera ROI. The majority of the chunk, right? So, and coming from a CPG space, trust me, I agree with Abhishek, because digital mein I could never see sales, right? I never had the opportunity. But anyways, so I agree with Abhishek. I think you want to build a brand which, so for example, some of the most massive brands have been built because of continuous amount of spendings on the ATL or, X amount of GRPs. But let me just give a very different technology perspective. Let me just take it to the next level. Right? So I wish I could say first party data. I've had conversation with a lot of my brand manager friends who's like, we are making first party data. I'm like, karega kya hai? Like, that's the next level. Like, everybody thinks they can do Google or first party data. But I think first party data is great. Customer data pools are great. But honestly speaking, if you frankly ask me my point of view from the technology point of view, I think you got to find out where your customer is. And if you think your customer is only on Google and Meta, I think you're highly mistaken, right? I mean, at the end of it, classic concept of what they taught us in B school, right? Backward integration. Today, I think, let me just give a very interesting perspective. Smartphones. On an average, a person spends 7 hours on the smartphone, on an average XYZ, right? Now, let me just, so when I was on the brand side, I never thought of smartphone as a separate media investment. For me, it was always like TV, print, and then digital, and essentially at an overall level. Let me just call out the smartphone, right? I mean, again, very, very extreme perspective, but this is one commodity which will keep selling. I mean, something 50% of Flipkart and Amazon sales come from smartphone. I mean, that's the kind of power of this commodity. Now, given that 95% of our market share is Android, and again, talking from a India perspective, right? And obviously, over the last 3 years ago, it was Samsung and Apple and then Micromax, and now it is Oppo, Vivo, Xiaomi. And one of the predictions which we are consciously making from a technology, you'll see more diversification. You'll actually see a lot of mobile handset brands coming up. Now, this is the question which I'm going to ask, put it on the table, right? So today, people have gone to that extent where they have started integrating with mobile manufacturers directly, right? At the end of the day, because I understand that, and again, I'm saying Google and Meta sit on the smartphone. I'm saying, why are we waiting for them to integrate with the smartphone? That's one of the ways we are doing it, right? Why can't we just have an API sitting in the smartphone itself? Is it possible? Absolutely. There are people who are building this tech, right? Now, what I'm trying to explain to you is that you are actually controlling your audiences as smartphone sales keep increasing, right? So from I wish I could give some insights on the first party and tech pool and all this stuff. I think those are far more complex. I think there's a lot of work to be done there. But I think one of the easiest tactical moves which we can do is if we start taking things of smartphones, and this is some of the most, and again, giving e-com, they were like first movers advantage. They actually identified, okay, you know what, my customer is this guy who buys a Xiaomi handset in the age of 18 to 25, and it is in this 3-4 cities where the pipeline distribution is happening, and I know I'm going to increase my share here. So what I'm trying to explain is that essentially it's going back to the basics, right? Can I start getting myself integrated with the OEMs directly? And again, now let me take it to the next level. We are entering in a world of smart. This word smart, right? Everybody uses the word smart, right? So today, we think only about the smartphone, but then tomorrow it's going to be the smartphone and the smartwatch and your fridge, and you won't believe your washing machine also is going to be smart. So essentially today, these manufacturers are already far ahead in building this technology. It's all about as marketeers adopting that. Again, a very, very extreme approach to think about things, but this is one
No,
way.
I think this is an interesting point that you make. And let me just paraphrase it and, the larger trend that you're mentioning, right? In my view, and this is extension of your point, that because of this major shift that we're seeing in the privacy-centric world and, the obvious impact on the large players like Meta and Google, I think there will be a huge opportunity for new platforms to come and start sort of creating a little bit more space, right? And we obviously talk about Amazon as the third player, or I think the mobile manufacturer OEM partnerships would probably be, which also gives the market to probably expand a little bit more in terms of number of players who can probably do that. I think that's a valid point. Sachin, I think I won't come to you, right? Again, having said the top of the funnel conversation, I think which is important, brand love, context is important. New ways of reaching out to customers is going to be very critical as cookies get deprecated and the issues become. Again, from your perspective, both as somebody who has enough data about the customers, right? And also from a perspective that you're a continuous growth. So prospecting is very critical for you as well. What are the ways and means that you're looking at building your, so to say, marketing advertising strategies as we move forward?
Yeah. So, I would say let's start focusing on the fundamentals again. Let's go back to them. And I'll just tell you three points. First, you have your own data. Take charge of it, understand it well. This is a high time when you need to invest in a good CDP. Have single source of truth in your organization. Have the entire data at one place and know your customer extremely well. Because, the customers which you already have, they'll tell you a lot of things about them. What kind of customers they are, and once you know these customers, you know where to find people like them, right? So, basis that I'll come back to come to my second point, which is utilizing second-party cookies. between third party and first party, we often, forget the direct deals which we can do. We can reach out to other organization, do a barter maybe, if it makes sense, right? Utilizing their first party data on top of your first party data, and you can have a kick-ass marketing plan. So I'll suggest, start focusing on that. Third, obviously, which is the simplest thing and the most difficult one, is create organic traffic. And it goes back to what Abhishek was trying to say: create brand love, create trust, right? So that people on their own come to your side when they need your product, rather than you going out, and catching them here and there.
Very interesting. So, and I'm going to start from the third one. Push versus pull. And again, coming back to a point that we're discussing, that as marketers, we've been very transactional, right? So drive more pull, and I think that'll be a solution to discover new customers. First party, second party, third party obviously become very relevant. Interestingly, your tech stack, right? And that's where you're mentioning the CDB. Your technology stack will have to be reorchestrated for you to start, kind of dealing with this other thing. And if I may add a couple of more marketers, and I think that's again going back to fundamentals of marketing, we'll have to get used to model data a lot. And I think Rishi was mentioning about cohorts and so on and so forth, right? Today, reliance for marketers on last click attribution or understanding individual customer behavior on their platforms or outside of their platforms very critical. So I think model behavior will become absolutely critical for you to say. I think one last point is, and again, not to make it very technical, the other thing I believe all marketers need to start looking at is to look at looking for an identity resolution partner, which fundamentally means an alternative to cookies. And there are a few in the market which are already being discussed, like Trade Desk UID and so on and so forth. But I think that's another area for all of us to look at. I know, Abhishek, you've picked up, so any comment on that before we open for questions?
No, I mean, one last, why am I so loud? No, so one last, at the risk of sounding very controversial, we as marketing folks as a bunch are very lazy people by genetically. And third-party cookies have made us lazier. The time has come from moving from intrusive marketing to permission-based marketing. I mean, you will have to understand what the customer wants to watch and buy and engage with. If you are not able to do that, there could be hundreds of strategies to do that. Tactical is not one of them.
That's an interesting thing. Again, value exchange, make sure the customer has the control, and that's what the regulations and consumer trends say. So, we will stop here, and if there are any few questions, we're happy to take them. Please address it to the panel directly. And obviously, the MC wants us to wrap up quickly.
I mean, I'll just add on the guy who was actually surfing for Mercedes and getting pounded by the Mercedes ad was Abhishek. He was the one who was. So I thought I'd just let the group know.
I'm sure he's bought a few of them as well. All right, truly appreciate it. Thank you very much. Final comments. Stay close to what's happening. I mean, that's all that we marketers can do, and stay calm. I think that's what's critical. Thank you very much.